candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Avad Beck's podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a great episode today. I met this beautiful soul about a week ago. So this is Shannon Dobbs. Get ready. It's going to be a long one. Shannon is the founder of the Fellowship of Living System. And we're going to talk about that. So he's going to explain it to us. He explained it to me already, but I feel like I was kind of selfish a little bit, but he's going to talk about it some more. And he's also the co-founder of the Regenerative Impact Alliance. So, Shannon, welcome to the show. Welcome for making time for a conversation. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me on your show. I love the backdrop. I love the conversation that we had last week. I'm just really excited to dive right in. Yeah, I'm feeling good today.
Good. I'm very happy to have you on. So, two companies, right? Why? Somebody would ask. Because starting one thing is already big enough. Some of us are crazy enough to do more than one. So what was the reason behind your crazy to get this companies going? And I understand there's a synergy. If you want to talk about how they're synergistic and how they relate to one another while telling us why you decided to be a founder and a co-founder of these two companies.
Yeah, well, it's not the first companies that I've started, first of all. I've been a business owner and an entrepreneur for many years. I was in the nightclub industry for a long time. Before that, I was in the leadership in the U.S. military. And so I've been in kind of some type of role like this for a long time.
Right.
About a decade ago, I got involved with food justice advocacy, really because I was running my businesses and realizing that my staff and my customers and my friends were all basically dying of preventable food-related diseases around me because we all lived and worked in the food deserts in the area. And if you're not coming from the United States, that may be an unfamiliar term. A food desert is a U.S. Department of Agriculture term that describes areas that don't have access to a healthy grocery store, a retail outlet, anywhere within walking distance. And most of the world doesn't understand that that's even a thing, because in most of the world, you have small markets and corner stores everywhere. But in the United States, we invented this model called the supermarket, and it became the dominant model in our country to the point where it started kicking all of the smaller stores out of business. And this has been happening for 50, 60 years now. And so now, as a result, we've had these growing pockets of area that can't support the supermarket model and basically isn't allowed to have any other model in existence because it's considered a competitive threat to these giant corporations. And so we're in quite a pickle here because our system has evolved to the point where it's basically taken over our food access area. And our communities no longer have the agency to be able to handle these challenges. What's interesting is that if you go across the world to Africa, to South America, to some other places that are considered developing nations, you don't have these situations where everybody's getting in their own way and really kind of blocking progress because you've got established industries that are threatened by change. And so what I've been doing for the last couple of years is really kind of pivoting away from my own area. I've been an advocate here in the United States for almost a decade now. And I've now started having conversations with folks in Kenya and folks in Trinidad down in the Caribbean and folks around the world that are actively looking for solutions like the ones that have been solved here in the United States and like the ones that have been solved around the world. But these areas are actually trying to solve these problems. And so the conversations that I'm having are much more fruitful. And what's really interesting about it is that you really can't be an advocate and just be like, hey, my name's Johnny and I'm an advocate and I'm going to be doing these things. I'm going to be volunteering to support some nonprofit organization or some community group anywhere just as a person. Like it doesn't work that way. Nobody's going to take you seriously. If you don't have a business card and a website and some sort of business function or an entity, then you basically don't exist in the world as far as networking is concerned. I mean, it's really, really hard to get around without it. And so really with the public benefit company, it's a choice to step away from the nonprofit sector and to understand that the nonprofit sector really has challenges with trying to solve problems, that if those problems are solved, then that nonprofit no longer is relevant. And so we really have to start re-looking at market aligned strategies and how do we exist in the existing market to solve the problems that are caused by the market. And there's a lot of people that say that that's not possible. You can't solve the system from within the system. But as somebody who's operated in this system as an entrepreneur, as a commercial property owner, as a developer, as so many different things for so many decades, I have walked to this path enough that I can basically show people like this is how you build business in a way that is regenerative, in a way that is circular, in a way that supports community. And here's how you fold these community efforts into your business model. And so what I've been doing is teaching nonprofits and community groups and community leaders, essentially, this is how you build business within your community and how you create market aligned strategies that actually get resources into your community and that you can control and coordinate so that you're not as dependent on grants anymore. And so that you can actually step away and be in a sovereign situation where you can solve your own challenges because you have the ownership and control of the tools that you need. And that's a key kind of situation, is that if you're operating in the nonprofit sector, and I ran a 501c3 American nonprofit organization from 2016 until I sunsetted it in 2022. And that was the year that I started Fellowship of Living Systems and said, okay, we need to try something different because this route is fundamentally, it's the wrong route. It doesn't work. The grants are misaligned with it. You can't get funding to fund capital projects or to fund mission aligned projects because the funders are like, they're looking for how do we maintain control? How do we do this situation in a way that we can, kind of be the colonial aspect of this and position ourselves as the expert and really not get out of the community's way. And so what I've done is essentially flip that script and said, here is me setting up a business that really exists only to show other organizations how to set up business and how to function and how to and essentially acts as a facilitator so that if a group over in Story Village along Lake Victoria, as an example, wants to set up a business and wants to understand how to do that, we can connect with global diaspora investment. We can help them to connect with the resources that they need to build their system up, and then we can set up educational resources so that their community understands how to operate it, how to maintain it, and how to build it internally. So this is a very fundamentally different way of dealing with climate change, food insecurity, water insecurity, technological access, education, so many different things that we deal with.
It's incredible and very involved. And, the one thing that stuck out to me while you were talking was basically the competition that does exist with the big box stores and, community organization who are looking to make change, especially in food deserts. Given that you've already experienced, from our previous conversation, you've experienced what it feels like to go up against, the powers that be. It was not your plan. However, you were faced with having to deal with this. So how do you help business owners who are looking to navigate the same landscape, who may potentially face something like this? Or is it your opinion that is not as bad outside of the United States, or it doesn't exist outside of the United States? And if it does, and given what you experienced already in the United States, do you think there's a way forward at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what's interesting. The thing that's come out of this last decade, because I consider all of this to have been market research. I consider all of these processes, as heartbreaking as some of them were,
Yeah.
this is all getting us a better understanding of like what exactly are the challenges. A lot of times when people even talk about food insecurity, they think about maybe I don't have a car, but maybe they don't think about disabilities. Maybe they don't think about if you got two kids in tow. Maybe you don't think about if you're riding the bus and the bus driver just doesn't like the fact that you brought your groceries on in a cart. And so he's saying that you got to put everything onto a seat. So maybe you don't have teeth. And so when you get home, you're having a difficult time trying to figure out how to turn that food into something that you can eat. Maybe you don't have a functional kitchen at home. And so when you get home, you get online and you're like, how do I cook food? And they're going to say, well, you put stuff on the stove. And then you say, well, what if I don't have a stove? Those are the types of things that we really dig into. And when it comes to the big picture stuff, when it comes to the things that require connections like commercial kitchens, food rescue at a macro level, waste to value, connecting farmers with the urban communities, developing retail in different locations, different communities. One of the biggest things that I really share with people is that there's different levels of communication and intersection. And what we're used to as a society is making all of our rules and all of our changes at the policy level. So everybody talks about policy changes. Everybody talks about the policy fights, about the laws that we have to change in order to fix the problems. But the thing that people don't understand about the market and about the situation that we've basically built for ourselves is policies are just a framework. They're the scaffolding that allows us to build business within them. and to operate. Basically, everything that we do in society operates within this existing framework of laws. But once the framework exists, if we need to solve a challenge, and if we can solve that challenge within the existing framework, we don't have to go change any more laws. All we have to do is set up direct business to business relationships. So specifically, you were talking about a business owner. So the traditional way that a business owner would try and create change, go down to City Hall, make friends with a city commissioner or with the mayor or somebody like that, build up a presentation, go to the thing, present to the whole city council, get lobbyists together, do the whole fight. This is the standard process that everybody goes through
Mhm.
in order to solve anything these days. Meanwhile, you've got somebody, let's say you got a farmer that's outside of that city completely. It's over the next county over, and that farmer says, hey, I'm going to start up a business turning waste into value. And they can go into that business, talk to that business owner, or even talk to just the department that handles the waste. It doesn't even have to be the business owner. It can be down here at the loading dock, and this is what I call it, the loading dock strategy. But Chef Jose Andres talked about it when he fed an island in Puerto Rico back in 2017 during Hurricane Maria. Millions of people were without power. They didn't have any food available, and FEMA wouldn't let him in the front door. So he went around to the back, to the kitchen entrance, and he started talking to kitchen owners and kitchen managers and suppliers and all the people on the island that actually got stuff done. And by the time FEMA got their shit together and actually got their first redistribution, the whole island was eating. So yes, there's absolutely a way to work around these dysfunctions, but we need to start recognizing that it is a dysfunction.
Yeah.
And that is something that we need to really start focusing on. How do we route around this? By talking to different people, frankly.
Yeah. So going back to the human aspect of these things, because we've dealt with people, we've dealt with humans, and sometimes humans can be finicky, right? I'm being very nice here. I don't even notice Shannon. So the whole story about Chef Andres, and we know his impact and the things that he has done. Do you think that his notoriety may have also been an advantage? Because sometimes people actually do know a problem exists and they do know a change is necessary, but because of their own apprehension, they are very unlikely to either join an effort to make change, or they fear retaliation of sort, or they fear the guys with the big box, right? So do you think that in that case, Chef Andre's notoriety also benefited in getting people together to really make the impact that he ended up making?
In that particular situation, I would say no.
Mhm.
I think the fact that he had friends on the island, I think the fact
Okay.
that he had people from his chef days that he knew who to call and say, hey, are you still working that business down here in such and such? Or are you still running that supply depot? Because, hey, we got this situation going on. It's not notoriety. It's not like people see him walking down the street and like, oh my God, Chip Andres, he's going to save us all. It's just like, is somebody going to answer the phone? And so that connection, that networking is very personal, and it's not one person is going to be able to solve that. It's really relational to each community. In your community, that might look like a church leader. It might look like a community elder. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at it, but really, like, who are the key leaders that people coalesce around? And if those people are empowered with the tools and the education and just some primer videos and some basic, like, this is what's going on, so that those key leaders understand what's happening and so that they can translate that to their community effectively, what we found is that that's the effective way of actually getting these situations across. I mentioned Sori Village in Kenya. This is an active project that I'm volunteering in. And what we're doing is we're taking a situation that I observed when I was living in Ensenada, Mexico. During COVID, I was checked out. I was hiding under a very pretty rock on the beach, paddle boarding, ignoring the world, everything like that. So that was my 2020, 2021 experience. And then I was going through a divorce. I had to come back in country and file documentation. So, that part of my idyllic life went away. I ended up in Colorado with a very different experience. Now I'm skiing. It's all good. So while I was there, my landlord was talking about our neighbors down the street, the colonias, and what
Yeah.
they had been dealing with this dysfunction in the water system forever. Like, Mexico's known for having, crap water. And if you drink it, you're gonna get sick. And so, like, everybody knows that. Don't drink the water in Mexico. And so what they're doing is, because of the dysfunction, because the government had been unable or unwilling to do anything about this for decades, like literally generations, these guys got sick of it, and they finally said, you know what? Why don't we identify where the water's coming into our neighborhood and just install a reverse osmosis filtration system right there? And that way, everything downstream of that point is clean water. And then if you replace pipes downstream from that point, you know that it's clean water going into the pipes. And so they did that, and they just crowdfunded it, and they figured out, how much everybody's willing to put in, and they ponied up their shekels, and they passed the hat around, and they bought a reverse osmosis filtration system. And then all the heavy metals and all the, pesticides and the, chemicals from prescription drugs and all the other crap that goes through the water system that we can't, do anything about, they got it out of there. And then everything in that neighborhood was clean. And so that ended up being essentially what I was sharing with the leaders in Story Village. It was like, hey, they just did this over here, but here's the thing: you guys are talking about women's empowerment too. You're talking about growing an industry around this. So what if you just put a card reader system at the front of that filter, and now the women have accounts that they can coordinate and they can control with the whole community. And now instead of hauling water, they're just coordinating access. And what if that thing is solar powered so it runs no matter what the grid situation looks like? So I went out and I did a little research because, I'm a curious guy. And as it turns out, there is an exact model available in Kenya of a water filtration system that's got a card reader attached, that's solar powered, and that it can handle about 85,000 gallons per day, which means that their entire community can get free water access. It can get equitable water access. And here's where it's crazy. So we started talking about aquaponics, and we talked about how if you create a big sediment pond up in front
Right.
before it hits the RO filter, you can have that sediment pond pre-filter the water, and the RO filter doesn't have to work as hard. That gives you plants up top, and it gives you fish underneath. So now you've got clean water that comes past the first layer. Your kids can swim in it without getting sick. You got 97.5% of the pollutants are gone by the time it even gets to the filter. And now you can create this protected zone. And so that's what we're essentially building right now and designing and fundraising for globally, is showing diaspora investors empty over in Miami. If you're living overseas and you got family over in Africa, check it out, because we're doing this crazy thing right here, and it looks like it's going to work. And it's something that's going to create long-term capacity. And it's going to give your family an opportunity to be able to get out of subsistence and move into business ownership and move into, as a community, how do we grow this market for the entire region?
That's amazing. And, I know you and I talked about agriculture the other day, and that is, part of, I'm very interested. We'll talk after this. Going back to the story from Mexico, right? So this was a known problem, and this was a known problem that everybody basically knew the government was doing nothing about it, right? So did you experience, or did this community experience, any pushback when it came to installing this filtration system for their neighborhood? Because a lot of people hesitate to do things. I am not a lot of people, but a lot of people hesitate to do things because of the pushback they fear, or the anticipatory. So was this a worry at all? Was this a concern at all? Or was there any concern raised? Because again, you're doing something that kind of like sets you apart and, affects you in a different way than other people are being affected. So do you know a backstory of any pushback they may have had, or anything they may have struggled with getting maybe a permit? Or I don't know how Mexico works, but in most states in the United States, you have to get a permit from the mentioned city hall to even do anything.
So again, I lived in Mexico. Compared to the United States, it is incredibly easy to get things done.
Okay.
Like orders of magnitude. Getting a permit on a project like this in Mexico might be as simple as just going down to the neighbor at the corner and be like, "Hey dude, you're this pipe's crossing your land. Can I tap it?" Like literally, it might be as easy as that. I don't know exactly what the permit process was, but apparently they were working on their third and fourth and fifth colonias by the time I left country. And so this was something that was, the permitting process, they were figuring it out. They were working with the city. This wasn't like ninjas putting on headbands and dropping an RO filter in the middle of the night. This was they were working with the authorities and making sure that it was in line with, the existing structure. They just weren't waiting for somebody to fund multiple hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure repair in order to be able to get clean water to their neighborhood. They were like, "Oh, why don't we just tap it right here and then fix the problem?" And so that was kind of the key thing that I wanted to share with Walter and his community. And then if you go over to the Caribbean side, it's almost the exact opposite, because we're looking at the island tourism situation and how you've got all of this food waste coming out of the tourist situation. This is something that's everywhere in the world. It's very common. People know that there's desperate need and desperate hunger, and then you've got these giant resorts that are producing way more food than they need. And there's no way to connect those two worlds. And so what we're doing now is we're sharing the strategy that was developed in Las Vegas, where they're using blast chillers to safely rescue prepared meals that are coming out of resorts and cruise ships and anything. And so they figured this out in Las Vegas. They spent, millions of dollars understanding the technology and figuring out the best practices and doing all this other stuff. And then what I did was reverse engineered what they had done and say, okay, how can we make this work in Colorado? How can we make this work in Trinidad? How can we make this work in these different areas? And so the Trinidad situation, we're actually crowdfunding for a guide out there who owns his own business. He owns a mulching company that he's been in business for over 10 years. He's very experienced. He's very well connected with all of the different waste sources. And what they're looking at is humisoil, which is that's the agricultural product I was telling you about for the waste to value,
Right.
using humisoil to be able to take island waste, anything from trees to carcasses from agricultural work to, grass clippings from parks departments, anything, and then turn that into a topsoil that actually reduces irrigation needs. So by creating that circularity and reducing the demand on irrigation and the demand on the scarce water, you can actually increase the availability of water on the island. And because it makes the food more bioavailable on amended property, it
Right.
reduces irrigation costs and makes better food. It makes healthier food. And so we're creating that waste to value circle, and we're kind of showing municipalities this is how these products work if you take it to this scale. And we're showing community action groups this is how a coalition is formed to be able to approach this and actually use this tool, not just project by project and state by state, but actually as a coalition, as a movement, as a regenerative circularity exercise, if you will. And so that allows us to bring in more stakeholders. It allows us to create a bigger tent. And so now it might just be conservation folks, it might be farmers, it might be ranchers, it might be parks department, it might be the ocean conservation folks that are bringing in that sargassum crap that they can't get rid of, or algae blooms or anything like that. They can actually corral it into a certain area, shove it into a pile, inoculate it, and it ends up being inputs. And what's cool about this is this stuff's very expensive once it's
Yeah.
created. It's very valuable. And so once we create the piles, now we have a market we can develop with the farmers where we're negotiating with them. Like, this is 1 cubic yard for 1 acre. Boom, boom, boom. We do the amendments. Now we test it. Now we measure it. Now we bring the data back so that year after year we have the evidence basis to understand what's actually changing on the ground in Kenya, the Caribbean, in Colorado, in Austin, Texas, wherever we're going. And so each one becomes a pilot that's focused on a particular extreme weather situation or mobile rollout, or how to do this in conjunction with land development, how to do this in conjunction with ecotourism. So each situation ends up being its own story. It doesn't change the story of what the initiative is, but it adds very powerful instruments and very powerful strategies to whatever those stories are to give people an understanding of, like, this is how we can actually elevate our approach as a systemic approach.
Yeah. Very interesting. And I love the connection point because traditionally people think that, starting a business and doing business requires you to work in silos. I don't know why that has become a norm for us as humans. Could be trust issues, just could be anything. I don't know. And, the very fact that the business, what you do, is not something that divides or keeps people apart, but instead brings people together and to see how they can commonly benefit is incredible. Going back to agriculture, right? I don't know if you know the estimation for the agricultural growth in the African continent, but that is something that has attracted a lot of attention, globally. So in the African landscape and dealing with things, especially with the government, I'm not saying it doesn't happen in other government structures. I'm going to speak for, my knowledge. Sometimes there's a need to butter people up, right? So I view experience as that, and also understanding this. Is there a framework for you to circumvent, these kinds of things? Especially you have a proof of concept, right? So it's not like you're just blowing smoke. You have a proof of concept.
We have working models. Yeah, the Humasoil is operating in 33 countries.
Right.
MGM and just celebrated their 5 millionth meal rescued. The
Nice.
retail model that I'm strategizing, I developed the retail model, but it's based on a model that's hundreds of years old in the United States, the
Right.
dry goods store. So these are not and none of this is new. It's just the coordination strategies that we're using to bring them together and to integrate them into community needs. That's what's unique.
Right. So basically, in expanding this, because I see the growth, have you thought about how to circumvent people needing to be butted up in a sense for the communities to actually benefit from this? Because coming from a fishing community, just as you were talking, and you touched on different facets from marine, health to agriculture, food rescue to composting, manure, all of that stuff, right? And I can, in my mind's eye, just draw the map on all this connection. So, the question again, do you have or do you plan on, any ways to circumvent all of these things? Or is it important, going back to Chef Andre's, having people, friends on the island, people who knew how the island worked or who had resources, right? So have you thought of a way to circumvent, the unnecessary buttering up? Or are you focused on having people who have an equal amount of buy-in and are familiar with, different ecosystem or countries to have this project continue to expand?
So I don't like to use the term circumvent, but I do absolutely have a plan for empowering communities with a voice so that they don't have to feel like they have to go through a point of contact.
Okay.
And so the specific what you're talking about, it's just a natural way things work. Is we're 25,000 people. I'm going to pick on Sorry because they're in Kenya. They're a very strong community group. They have connection with academic groups. They have connections with engineering. They have they're really good heads on their shoulders. They've been in this process for a little while. They're not and they're not starry eyed. Oh my God, somebody help us.
Right.
And yet they're still like the whole community has to go through a point of contact. So what they'll
Right.
do is they'll send one person out. It's like, hey, go down to the capital, go to Nairobi, and we're going to talk to such and such today. And on your way back, meet up with so and so. And we're gonna and so they're strategizing a plan. And it's like you got to have one person or maybe two people doing all of this work trying to do that. And what's crazy is like this is the same challenge that I'm dealing with as an advocate. I've got very severe disabilities, and so I don't have the capacity, I don't have the bandwidth to do all that legwork. And so I've had to figure out, okay, how can I leverage my connections and how can I leverage the interactions that I'm making with these community groups so that I'm not having to do a whole bunch of work and so that they're basically empowered to be able to do the legwork that they need to do. And in order to do that, they need to have the tools to actually be able to tell this story. And so what's happening in the last 18 months has been really fascinating because throughout history, this has been the challenge is how do we bring this communication to the point where the whole community can talk about it? And social media was supposed to be the answer to that. But the problem with social media is that you only know what you see, and the algorithms basically stop you from seeing anything that's of important. You can't even see what your neighbor's doing or your best friend's doing because you're only going to see 1%, and then they're just trying to sell you on products. And so that's not the answer. And now we've got this situation where these new technologies, now suddenly we have the ability to talk to computers in our own voice from our own lived experience with
Yeah.
our own questions, and the computer can listen to us and answer us back in our own language. That's never happened before. That's the big shift. And so now what we're doing is we're really changing our focus. Like Story Village, we're focused on women's empowerment and water security and clean water access. But now I've been telling the team, I was like, we can't focus on that right now. We need to focus all our intention on getting you the capacity to be able to tell this story. And not just you, but everybody in your community. And so what I'm doing is I'm sharing with them. I don't know if you're familiar with like Notebook LM as one of the Google Gemini
Yes.
tools came out. Well, that was intended for college students. But now we're finding out that we can create source materials and put them into the LM and then share them with our team members across the world. And now they can create primers in their own language, from their own lived experience, from the same source materials that we're using. And now they have the ability to actually educate the people that they're talking to and to show their community how to create their own stories. And now, so now, somebody is in the village and they're having a conversation with their family member that lives down in Miami or down in New Zealand or in Australia or wherever they are around the world, diaspora folks, around the world, people that are just not in your home of origin. And they're saying, hey, Auntie, check out what we're doing. And here's some pictures and here's some videos. And oh my God, here's the progress. And here's the folks that are spearheading it. And oh, this is how I'm involved. And we're doing, we're learning how to do plants and all this other stuff. And that empowers those small dollar contributions. That empowers people to really feel like, oh my God, I know exactly what this money's going to. I know exactly what I'm supporting. and I can see day by day, this is what's happening. And so that's what we've got now that we've never had before. And so, yeah, we're focusing all our attention, like first dollars in donations, going to go to a really nice server computer and 20 to 30 Raspberry Pi workstations. And now kids and women are going to be able to actually get the tools in their hand and be like, oh, here's how I get my own account. Oh, here's the source materials we're all using. Oh, here's the videos that have already been created. Here's how I translate this. Oh, boom, boom, boom. Within a couple of days, everybody's fluent. Once everybody's fluent, then we start accessing VO. VO is a video producer. It creates full motion picture graphics videos. We can do that in 8-second clips. We can go through Flow and we can put together mini documentaries. Now this starts getting into the pain point of every community group everywhere. How do we tell our story? How do we create a mini documentary? Oh, we need thousands of dollars worth of cameras. Oh, we need to send somebody to college to learn video editing.
Right.
We need to send somebody to the States to understand how to connect with people in that language. Blah, blah. We don't need that anymore. None of it. All we need is an understanding of how to use these tools. And I'm even automating some of the tools, like some of the agentic AI. You can even get to the point where, like, okay, do this. And then every time this happens, do this. And it's just going to do it over and over again. But it's exciting for me because from where I'm at as an advocate, it's frustrating and it's exhausting. And it's scary to think that there's no amount of mopping up the ocean that's going to mop up the ocean. And then you start realizing that we can replicate ourselves.
Maybe you should start from the middle, Shannon. Just mop it from the middle.
Mop it from the middle. Yeah, go down to the Mariana Trench and just spin that mop and be like, all right, we got this. Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, every time we get into any of these conversations, it's always mopping the ocean. How big is the poly crisis? How big is climate change? How big is food insecurity? And they're so big that's like we can't find where do you get your fingers under? Where's the first place to start? And this is what we're finding out is that, $5,000 chunk, we can get an entire community hooked up with the tools, with reliable internet connection, with reliable power, with a reliable computer, and with basic source materials that can empower them to have their own conversation with everybody they want, to invite people over to use the Wi-Fi, to really kind of create this as a community space. And then that gives us the tools that we need to get the funding for everything else. And then as we get the emergency solution in place, now we can talk about the emergency solution, take the pictures, take the videos, do the thing, the testimonial, all the stuff. And then once we build the bigger picture solution and we get the waste to value in place and we get the processing in place and we really start growing this market, now that emergency equipment can go down to another village. So we're not wasting the purchase, we're just incorporating it into the expansion plan. And maybe that's the next village that we start working towards regional expansion. And because everybody's working through Ubuntu and because everybody is working on collective empowerment, and we don't have this cat eat dog situation like we've got over here in the West, we've actually got a chance to pull these things off.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to us and they want to get involved, you run two organizations that are very synergistic in nature. So Fellowship of Living Systems and also the co-founder of the Regenerative Impact Alliance. So how do they get involved? Do they reach out to you and you kind of like direct the traffic depending on what their focus is in, whether it's contribution, aligning with a community or starting something new? Would you be the best point of contact, or would they, go and check out, both of this organization?
This is where RIA comes in. So the Regenerative Impact Alliance is the nonprofit that's focused on the education. It's focused on capacity building. It's focused on the communication and on telling that story. So everything that we were talking about with the physical, like the water and the food and everything like that, that's all FLS.
Right.
RIA is where I would suggest that people volunteer their time. It is a registered 501c3, which means that you can get, donation credits for your time. We have a very robust system that we're inviting people to come in and learn with us. So we're kind of co-creating the situation as we go. The plane's already in the air and we're now building the plane. That's how it works. We're not waiting for perfect action. We are moving forward. We're supporting projects on the ground. We're doing things. And the intersection of where FLS, where my personal advocacy and the educational mandate of the nonprofit comes in, is in this capacity building. It is in on sharing these tools and helping people to understand how do we use these to increase our impact both at home and kind of in our wider circles. So Shannon at ria.earth, RIA.EARTH. That's how you get a hold of me. I'm going to figure out a way to automate this situation. So at some point in the near future, I'm going to hand you off to a bot probably. So just be prepared. I'm looking forward to like weekly or monthly calls where we can connect up and really kind of like lay out the groundwork. But I'm also going to protect my headspace a little bit. So we're going to figure this out. what we're really looking for, honestly. Like, yeah, we need funding, but honestly, what we really look for is volunteer leaders who are interested in coming in the ground floor of something truly different. And so if you're that person, reach out. Let's figure out how to slot you in. Let's figure out what your interests are. I don't really have like a set priority of what we're looking for with skill sets so much as curiosity and interest in learning new things.
Beautiful. So do you have a website for either of this organization?
Yeah. So ria.earth, that's the website for RIA. And then the Fellowship of Living Systems is livingsys.org.
Go there and learn and then reach out to you and have a conversation.
Yeah. And you can join our membership space and you can come in and start kicking the tires and you can help us build it all out. And yeah, all the stuff.
In the Snow, by the way, he's in Colorado. So um if as we're having this conversation and say somebody from a corporation is listening to us and this is a corporation that gets involved in impactful work like you're doing, supports advocates, supports community building initiatives, and it's an organization, it's not just somebody volunteering their time. So how do they fit into your general framework, whether it is with resources, because you did talk about fundraising, or is basically resources in terms of, you mentioned computers, cameras, whatever it is. So how do they get involved? How would their impact work out for what you're looking for right now outside of individual learners and contributors?
Okay. So in order to respond to that, I'm going to tell you somebody else's story.
Okay.
All right. So there's an organization called Project for Public Spaces. It's a nonprofit organization that's been around for 35, almost 40 years. So PPS runs a market program where they teach community groups basically how to develop community markets. And they developed a program called the Heart of Community back in 2013, something like that, about a little over a decade ago, where they collaborated with Southwest Airlines,
Okay.
and Southwest came in and donated $250,000 as a grant. And then PPS came in and matched that grant with $250,000 worth of expertise. So community engagement meetings, focus groups, all the different things that help the community to actually be able to engage their community and really teaching a local community group. And so what they would do is they would structure this as a grant application, and local groups would come in and vie for that space and that prize, and one every year they would choose, and they would use that would be their pet project for the year. Is like, this is the market that we're creating, and Southwest would brand it, and it would be on all the marketing, and it was a huge benefit for the corporation. Now, the programs that we're getting involved with are at multiple levels. Especially the tech companies saw this, hardware or AI or any one of the aligned organizations. If you start talking like, oh, this guy's talking about communication, he's talking about teaching grassroots group about AI and about emerging technologies. This is something that's really aligned with our message. Then you can sponsor a village with, I'd say probably about $20,000 to $30,000 would be a good sponsorship level that would get one of their community centers hooked up with the technology that they need to create classroom spaces, to have reliable internet, to have reliable power, so that wherever they're at, that community is hooked up globally and they've got the ability to bring in the information and to connect up with the expertise globally that is trying to help them on the ground. That is the foundational layer that we're looking at for support for any community. So whether it's Story Village, whether it's Trinidad, whether it's here in Denver area, I've got small local nonprofit organizations that are grassroots level that are looking for and are positioned to be able to provide that type of support to the community, and they're looking for that sponsorship. And so I'm not necessarily saying, hey, come in and sponsor my organization so much as my organization is going to identify local orgs that you can sponsor, and we're going to try and use a very similar framework that Project for Public Spaces developed to essentially create a similar impact for all of these different levels. Because some companies are able to contribute at the 5 to 30,000 range. Some organizations are big enough that they're like, hey, we're looking for something in the $250,000 to $1 million range. Some organizations are even bigger than that, and so we can really focus organizational attention on the type of project that makes sense for their scope, and really just kind of work together to figure out like what's the best fit. Where are you operating? First of all, that's a big question. If an organization's operating in Kenya right now and they're looking at emerging markets, and maybe they're a manufacturer, like especially like a food producer right now would be a perfect opportunity, because we can start getting into the conversation about how we can get their waste incorporated and how Homa Bay and Surrey Village can actually position to be able to service and supply those companies to be able to get last year's waste on next year's crops. and how to reduce irrigation needs systemically for these organizations. So it's not just donation anymore, it's actually self-interest. Because any corporation that's looking at this and not realizing, crap, if I could get 30% reduction on my irrigation costs for my crops, that's going to save on the bottom line. That's something that people that deal with bottom lines need to be paying attention to.
Well said.
Well, thank you. And then, I mean, that's not even including the marketing benefit. Like, look at what it does to your ESG ratings when
That's
you're
right.
proving that you're developing an entire market that's circularity, that's waste to value, that's creating, capacity and value and just a lifeline for a local community that's at subsistence level in an area that is absolutely integral to climate change. Like, look at Lake Victoria. It's the largest freshwater lake in Africa. It's the second largest freshwater lake in the entire world. It's incredibly polluted right now from fertilizer runoff and from heavy metals and other things that are ending up into it. If we can get a handle on reducing the amount of dependency on external fertilizers, then that reduces the inputs on the lake. If we can start passively cleaning the water as it's coming into villages all around the lake, that's passively cleaning the lake. It's not something that we're necessarily focused on, but if you're looking at the bigger picture, if we get a bunch of these all over the world and we start replicating this to where everybody's using it, that passively cleans the planet. And not everybody really thinks at those scales, but like, really think about it. If we get waste to value popularized, if we're able to gain traction, different continents, then we've got a real way to take problematic waste and turn it into something that reduces irrigation needs. It reduces wildfire issues. I'm here in the Southwest US. Wildfires are a horrible, horrible problem out here. And if we can get soil that retains water, that's going to help. If we can turn clear cut into soil that retains water, that's going to help even more. It's going to help regrow after a fire too. So yeah, there's so many different applications. And we really need to dig into each one of them to talk this through. But I mean, that's why I focus on the projects that I'm focused on.
Thank you for that answer. Long but educational. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So another company that I was thinking about when you started talking was solar. In Africa, we don't have a shortage of sun. We have sun in abundance. And the flip side of that is that the electricity is not always reliable. And to have systems that are working and doing what they're supposed to do, maybe not round the clock, but majority of the hours in a given day, you kind of need reliable energy, electricity. So a great point for a lot of solar companies to make an impact here, whether it's donating equipment, sponsoring a village, anything, an initiative that will keep this project going, even if with a borehole. Water is flowing, they have reliable water source. All of these things affect the environment in a very positive way. So it's really exciting what you're working on, Shannon. And I
Absolutely.
know it sounds like a lot, but you do have a strong support system. And for everybody listening, be the additional support system. He needs help. He's not going to ask for it, but
No, no,
I'm,
no. I don't need any help. I'm set. I got a beautiful wall behind me. Sorry, village needs help. Consumption
okay.
literacy
He
project here in
needs
Denver
help to
needs
help
help.
the villages. How's that?
I don't need help. I need support for these
He
community
needs
projects.
the support and the volunteers. How's that? Did I say better?
So here's what's really interesting about what you just said. We were talking about solar, and this project specifically includes solar. But what we're doing is instead of just having solar panels in a field, what we're doing is raising them up so that you can have sheep and cattle and crops grown underneath. It's called agrivoltaics is the term for what's used. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but we're actually going to be incorporating that. And what that does is it allows for up to 160% of land usage. Because you get 100% of the solar and you get 60% for shade tolerant crops and you get some forage space. It's a great synchronicity. And what we're doing is we're figuring out, obviously it's not something I'm spearheading, but communities are figuring out like, oh, if we just put solar down, that's a waste of an acre. And we shouldn't have to choose between energy production and food production when we have shade tolerant crops, when we can just lift them up about 8-10 feet. And now we can do both. And so I'm really excited about bringing that in. And especially if there's any companies that are looking on the edge of that and are looking for opportunities to experiment with different communities, this is actually not only is Story Village and the Homa Bay region going to be impacted, but in Homa Bay County, there's also a refugee camp with over 300,000 people living in it. And so by developing this market and by developing these food security initiatives, we're actually going to be intersecting with that refugee camp. And we're already collaborating with them on how to get assistance in that area, how to bring capacity in to be able to develop boreholes so that they've got more access to water in that area. So this really is a regional support network. It's not just one small village building up. It's really incorporating the city to the north. It's incorporating the county government. This is kind of a big picture push, or it's getting
Beautiful.
to that.
Yeah, I like the innovative ways of thinking about things. I'm very much outside of the box kind of a thinker. So anything that, maximizes the use of a space, why not? So it's great that it's being initiated. So on the flip side of corporations, it's the investors. So the VCs, the angels, and the people with a little extra in their pockets. So for people that are listening that could fall into that category, whether a venture capitalist, a hedge fund manager, or hedge fund company, or angel investors who, yes, they can go into a website, yes, they can look at all of that, but they still ask for a pitch deck. So is there a way to get a deck to a potential investor to kind of like look at their potential ROI? Because ROI is really big with this community of investors. So do you have something like that can satisfy the subset of those kind of investors as well?
So yes, I definitely do have that, and I've got one for my company. It's so easy to develop a pitch deck anymore. Gamma will spit one out in 5 minutes for free. Gamma is it's a website, it's an AI that you can go in and basically tell it what you want, and it'll create up to 10 slides
Oh,
in a
okay.
pitch deck and on a free account. So you can go in there and basically that's another one of the tools that we show change makers how to use so that you can get in front of people. So instead of having to hire somebody to make one for hundreds of dollars, you can just go do it. But yeah, I mean, we can also customize the pitch to individual investors. One of the things that I really want to be careful about though is that we are specifically avoiding venture capital.
Got it.
So angel investors are welcome. We're going to be running on a land syndication program, which what that means is you take the investors and put them in as limited investors, and then the general partner, or you basically bring them in as limited partners. The general partner is the community itself. So by putting it that way, rather than having people invest in the company and have that need for growth constantly, and you have
Yeah,
to buy out and all that thing that goes on in the market, you're investing in the land syndication itself, and then within a 5 to 7 year period, the investors will get bought out and exit, and then the community owns and controls 100% of the investment. So all of the capital gets transitioned to community ownership, and that's the goal and the intent of the strategy that we've developed.
got
And
it.
so, because of that, we have to avoid specifically venture capital because venture capitalists invest in the company and they're looking for that hockey stick growth
Yeah,
model, quick exit, and everything like that. And this is land based. It's fundamentally different. It's going to be between 5 and 10 years, depending on what the negotiation goes, but we're going to be a longer period of time. And we're specifically looking for people who have a tolerance for just parking your funds for a few years and really seeing that legacy that comes from being part of the development process and being part of the wind and the wings.
right. It's a great thing that you know what you want and what you don't want. Because not all money is good money, especially in the business space. It is very important that founders know that. I know many people who have found themselves caught in the middle after entanglement of sort with VCs, and it's not really what they wanted, but at the time it was enticing, right? So it is great that you have a beautiful picture of the business model and you know where it stands and where it's going, and the focus is on the community and social impact as opposed to a beautiful hockey stick.
We're looking to get as close as we can to a nonprofit effect while
Right,
still playing in the market. And
right.
that's the key thing is that we have to play in the market because this separation and the redistribution and the whole giving thing, not everybody's following the news right now, but the
Mm,
vast majority of people on the planet are pretty aware that agencies are getting defunded, entire groups are going out of business. Like the nonprofit sector in general is in panic mode right now
that's true.
because oh my god, all of the fundamental assumptions that we've all had that we've been operating on. There was a huge growth during COVID to be able to create systemic circularity, but it was based on the global supply chain, and now we're seeing the global supply chain collapse. So a lot of the conversations that we're going to be having are going to be it's okay, it's all ending, but we have a path forward to level.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be doulaing a little bit of this as we transition into the new world.
I like the doula. That's the perfect way to explain it because
It is. I mean, if
this
you're
is
into
what I
tarot, the
people
death card is
understand.
both death and rebirth.
Yes, it's a different world right now, and sadly, it's reality. You know, you have to learn to pivot. That's the best thing about being in a business. The second best thing is being in a business, a people business, improving the lives of people. Because what happens is that you inadvertently improve your own life. You inadvertently learn something to have you have a different view. That is why this advocacy thing is something I'm very passionate about because in you looking past yourself, you often see a bigger picture of maybe things that you didn't think about. So I'm very excited for all the things that you're working on. We have some synergy and we'll talk about that.
We don't talk.
So great conversation. And I know that we are going to be touching base some more. But for everybody listening, if you didn't catch a lot of the things that were mentioned, like the website and everything, don't worry about that. We have that in the show notes. You can just click in and find the websites, how to contact Shannon as well. So, Shannon, can say before we end this beautiful conversation that we've had for quite a bit now, something that I usually ask my guests before we end the broadcast is to leave a golden nuggets or few golden nuggets for our listeners. So whether it's based on the business that you're running, your life experiences, making an impact, being an advocate, whatever it is, what is it that you can share with our listeners that you would like for it to make an impact?
I want to end this on a message of hope.
Mm.
A lot of people are making some assumptions that we're in kind of end times or that we're in really, really dire situation. But I'm here to tell you that we've been in a dire situation for a very long time. And you can say a lot about what's happening in the world right now. And I have a lot of things to say offline that I'll probably say in the corner. But here's one thing that you can take away. Anytime you shake up a system, it creates cracks. And the system that we've developed for ourselves over the last 3 generations is the thing that's destroying our planet. So we have to figure out how to take our system without breaking the whole thing and move it into a healthier direction. And that system itself resists change. So now we're in a time where there's some fluidity. There's some opportunity while the big wigs are fighting at the federal level and the global level for us at the community level to really start refocusing on interdependence, on developing capacity for resilience, and on anticipating what's going to be happening over the next 10 and 20 years and developing the ability for our communities to be able to not just withstand but thrive through these changes. And a lot of that has to do with just being able to coordinate. A lot of it has to do with, getting a decent sized tractor so we can do regenerative agriculture, with supporting farmers to be able to do transitions, with really facilitating this transition that all of us are going to have to deal with, but some of us are going to do it kicking and screaming. And so the more of us are on the side of supporting this transition, the more of us understand that there is another side and that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, the easier it's going to be for everybody.
So you said kicking and screaming. Can we also snort too? Like it kind of goes with it.
Yeah, and here's the thing is a lot of the kickers and the screamers are the ones that are in charge of the policy positions. So having a discussion about the fact that we can have a discussion at the loading dock sector, that we can have a discussion with departmental heads that have discretionary funding or agency leads that have discretionary basically they're within their frameworks and say, oh, I can hire a vendor to go handle the situation. Those kinds of conversations are something that we're not used to having. And we're not used to even understanding that there is a conversation. But as somebody who's been enlisted military, as somebody who's been a business owner, as somebody who's navigated these halls and these back doors and service entrances for decades, I can tell you that there are very different discussions happening on the ground from what's happening in these policy boardrooms.
I think it goes back to communication. We have to learn to talk to one another. I think we lost that art. I don't know where and when it happened, but we lost the art of conversing. And we're going back to it. It doesn't feel good. You talked about cracks without breaking the system. I think you're being a bit generous. I think things are going to break. Things are going to break.
Oh yeah, a lot of things are going to break. Like the whole
Yeah.
global supply chain's breaking right now, and we have to realize that that's happening. Like that's
Yes.
not a maybe anymore. I mean, there's a good chance that some countries aren't going to exist in 10 years. This is
That's
real.
scary.
This is a big,
That's
yeah. The global order that was established in 1947 is going away. We have to understand that that means big changes are happening.
Yeah.
I don't want to sugarcoat that. It's something that we just need to come to terms with in
Yes.
whatever way makes sense. Maybe it's a stiff drink. I don't know, but we got to figure it out because
We
it's
gotta
coming up
figure it
fight.
out.
Yeah. So a
You're
lot
right.
of the stuff that I've been talking about is literally like, how do we prepare for some of this stuff? How do we start coordinating better so that we get more of our resources? Because soon there's going to be less resources. And if we're ahead of that 8 ball and ahead of that curve versus behind it, we're going to be in very different situations.
Right. You're right. So thank you. Reality check. I mean, he buttered us up and then he got here and dropped us on our heads, but we needed it. So
Yeah.
we needed
Yeah,
it.
we do. We do. Occasionally I do too.
That reality, we need it. We need that. So it's necessary from time to time. But if you learn something, is, we've got to figure this out, everybody, and we've got to figure this out together, and we have to get involved.
And more importantly, we have figured it out. We've already figured it out, just not everywhere. Not yet.
Yes, yes. We have to apply it. We have to apply it. Application is key right now.
And we gotta recognize that sometimes we put our faith in organizations and institutions and sectors that have a vested interest in not solving these problems.
Mm.
I mean, these are just these realizations, things we got to understand about with the world.
I think we kind of realized that, but we're in a state of denial. Um, we were a state of denial for whatever comfort that brought. We were comfortable that maybe that will change. Maybe this one person will make the difference. And we kept repeating the same cycle over and over and over. But right now, a lot that is happening right now cannot be avoidable. So let's hope we learn from it.
I think it's the addiction, it's the breaking from addiction cycle too, isn't it?
I think so.
I think so. It's like when the pain of change becomes less than the pain of staying where you are. That's when change happens.
I guess we just got read, all right. I guess Shannon decided to.
Damn it, we were gonna end on a high note. Message of hope. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Oh my God. But I know this is a necessary conversation, and it takes a cluster of people in each ecosystem, like just what you're doing, to really drive that community-led, we call it grassroots effort. Call it whatever you want, whatever feels good, grassroots community, whatever it is. We need one another, and we need to grow and expand the knowledge that we already have. Nothing is really new. Everything is recycled, really. So it's about really implementing it and making it work for us. Nobody's coming to save you, right? That's what they say, Shannon. Nobody's coming.
We're all coming to save each other and ourselves. That's
Outside of us. Stop. Outside of
But yes, you're right. I'm not coming. I'm literally not going to leave my lazy boy. Like I'm comfy. I've got Costco down the street. I'm set. I'm hooked up. So I'm here in my comfy chair and I'm going to do everything I can from this position.
for needing a savior, right?
Hey, no, I told, hey,
Indulging you for nothing, Shannon.
oh my God. So
Goodness.
I literally told my sponsors out in Kenya, I said, the only way you're getting me out here is in celebration because we did it. I told them flat out, I was like, that's the rule. I was like, the only way you're getting Shannon out here is if we're celebrating. I will get on a 19-hour flight for that.
I think it'd be worth it. Once you step on the continent of Africa, it doesn't matter what country. It's just very homely.
Yeah. And I do
For
look
very
forward
loving
to
people.
visiting as soon as possible. It's a joke.
You should.
Yeah,
You
I'm
should.
looking
You
forward
love
to
it
it.
there.
Closest I've been, I think, was Malaysia, Indonesia area so far. So I'm working my way over.
Okay, hurry up, Shannon. Disinfect and hurry up. Get there soon. But thank you, everybody, for listening to us rattle. This is us. We do this quite a bit. We did this the last time we met. So, again, we keep things light. We have serious conversations because, again, this is life. You can either cry about it and just go curl up in a ball in a corner, or you can do something about it. And I applaud you, Shannon, for doing something. I am very grateful that you made time to be here. And thank you for having this conversation. It's not the easiest conversation to have. However, the reality is right there. You cannot ignore these things anymore.
It's a fun conversation to have. I mean, we are playing with cool toys. We might even have cookies. I don't know. Like,
Well,
I mean,
you
seriously, we're going. Okay,
get
wait.
it.
I got to end with this. I am a former nightclub owner running a food justice and climate initiative, which means the one thing that you can guarantee is I'm going to be throwing some hella parties. So
Did you say so?
look forward. Yeah. So if you know what a fundraiser is, it's a party for a cause.
True. True.
Somebody had to explain that to me. Like it took me a second to get. I get to keep throwing parties. What? So yeah, No, we're gonna have some fun. And digitally online, I mean, that's one of the things that we need volunteers for is like who wants to connect up with artists and turn some of their works into NFTs that we can use for crowdfunding prizes? Who wants to donate the use of a song so that we can create a video so that we can promote these things? Like let's all get involved with this. Like this is something that where we truly get to contribute our creativity and we get to do it on our own networks. And so everybody can step up and be like, you know what, I'm an ambassador. I'm an avatar for this situation.
I
That's
like,
that's the way it works.
I love it. You don't wait to be an expert. I listened to something yesterday, and it was about the founder of the Square, the credit card processor.
Yeah.
And the story was basically you don't have to be an expert in something. You have to have a need and want to do something about that need. It's a society thing too. We get so hung up on accolades. I don't have this education. I don't have this influence. I don't have this reach. I don't have this connection. And you beat yourself down so much and you have so much potential to make change, especially with people popping up everywhere. All it takes is alignment. Align yourself with the right people, align with somebody or people that are making changes in the world, whether in your immediate community or in the global world. Align and you'll be surprised how much you can do. So before Shannon gives us any more doom and gloom, I think is a good place to stop.
All right. All right. Ria.earth. Everybody come over and volunteer. Let's get involved.
That's right.
And we're going to make this whole thing happen. And I mean, learn
Yeah.
some cool stuff too and have
There
fun.
we go.
That's what I'm here for.
There we go.
It ain't fun. I'm not doing it.
Don't do anything if it's not fun. You get very bored and you wouldn't commit to it.
Exactly.
If it doesn't ignite me here or here, I'm not doing it. All right. So get involved with everybody. Thank you for listening to us chat. Let us know what you think. Please, please, please reach out, figure out what areas may fit into your life. No donation is too small. No donation is too small. See in your own world where you can align the services for the benefit of your community as well. You don't have to wait for that savior, that one person you think is going to do something. You may be that one person everybody's waiting on. So talk to people, see what you can find out, see how you can get involved and get things going. So thank you everybody for listening. I'm grateful for you. And Shannon, again, very grateful to have you here. And thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to AVP's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.